Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. As always, I am your gracious host, Captain Frodo, and it is a pleasure to be back with you here for one more week. This week I've been doing a whole lot of real world stuff. I've been wondering as the time goes by and the jobs still are elusive. Some of the jobs that looked like they were on the horizon has just recently been cancelled. Shows that have it's a difficult time for producers as well to put stuff on when you have to maybe pay for artists to stay 2 weeks in a hotel before you can even start, and anything could be shut down with one case of something in your theater, and before you know it you have the worst publicity you could possibly have. So of course it's a difficult situation, but I've been getting some offers and things that are still, if you look at the showman as someone who faces the others and has something to show them, then I have got some offers that are along that line, but it's more in relation to teaching or interacting with youth and young people, so that's quite exciting. I might do some assistant work in these things and see if there's a way we can sneak some circus and carnival ideas into the minds of the young. I have also there's a program here called a cultural school backpack in Norway. So I've been working on my school show, because the school shows are still happening here, and a friend of mine, Jay Gilligan's, who's doing a bunch of school shows in Sweden. The school show programs are still happening, so this is making me kind of pick up this thread that started when I did Circus Carny and these shows in Denmark, and it's quite remarkably interesting. So I've been doing a bunch of shows for families and that lately, and for children, and maybe I'll be doing some more of that over the next little bit. I organized a showing of my show so I could film it for my daughter's school, and that was very, very fun. It's great to have, because when you're filming kids, I had some kids up to help me out, and I had to choose some kids that I knew so that you could have permission from the parents to have it filmed. And I picked the son of a old friend of mine from childhood, and just as I was sitting on the cans in the end and I'm delivering this hopeful message, and there's no music and it's just sort of silent, and this kid who had up, and he magically produced a chocolate egg, and he just stood up and just took the crowd's attention away from me and went, it's like, "Thank you so much, Captain Frodo, for this chocolate egg. I am so grateful for the egg, and Captain Frodo was a good friend, childhood friend with my father. Thank you." And then just sat down, and of course the other children, nobody was laughing, but I was laughing because I just thought, this is so sweet. So anyway, I have been doing some shows, but very little. So let's see what we come up with. And I know that I have on the podcast, because it is taking a lot of time for me to do this, and to come up exactly with what I'm going to say and everything. So not each episode, but many episodes, I say, I'm going to only do this many more episodes or so, and that's obviously it doesn't add up. I think I've started to say that we are coming to an end of this podcast in episode 9, and now we're in episode 17, and yeah, this will not be the last one. This latest podcast and writing what I'm gonna say today reminded me of something Blaise Pascal wrote in a letter, and that must have been in the 1600s or something, and apparently the letter was very long, and he explained in it that I would have written a short letter, but I did not have the time. And this quote is found in similar flavors from other writers as well, and it reflects both the value and also the challenges of brevity. On the one hand, brevity forces us to cut excess and to distill a message to its core, but on the other hand, being accurate, clear, and concise can be very hard, sometimes impossibly so. Hence my constant chatter about how many episodes there will be in Season 1 of The Way of the Showman is still a mystery. I love mysteries. And it proves that I have no idea of how much I have to say about any given topic, or that I have enough time on my hands to cook each topic down to its essence. So yeah, there's many things. It makes me think of that. The clown announces to the world what his plans are, and the world just laughs and laughs and laughs. But that's all that I have to say, or can think of saying at this point in time. So let's dive in to the world of ideas. All right, let's get Carny-wise to the social media circus and explore the digital carnival. Anyway, last week we talked about the power of the as-if principle, the power of it to change minds as a tool to change the world. And we played around with the idea that changing the stories we tell has the potential to create real change in the world. When you explore the mythic carnival underground to the extent that I do, and perhaps you're beginning to do as well, we must always keep in mind that we are operating in a space of imagination. We spoke of different kinds of imagination in episode 2, and for those who want to go back and explore that in full. But there are different types of imagination. When used sort of derogatorily, you'll hear people say, "You're just imagining things," or "You just made that up." This reminds me of the people who look at the work of a showman and proclaims it's just entertainment. This just belies and belittles the scope and potential of these fundamental human activities. Yes, we are imagining things, and yes, it's entertainment, but there's nothing just about it. That would be like saying Jimi Hendrix just played the guitar, which he did. He did play the guitar, but that does not begin to tell the story of how hard he rocked and what he did with his guitar and what that synergy of guitar and man did. Not just to the generation who got the Jimi Hendrix experience live, but to all us who came after he passed away as well. And there you have it. Imagination, participatory experience, and entertainment in one transcendental package. An example of a great showman and his showmanship, or perhaps shaman and shamanship. That's a path we will venture down at a later season. Now, imagination is perhaps the key feature in the success of Homo sapiens, or modern humans. With the emergence of human imagination, the human mind could go beyond making accurate mental representations of their surroundings, to create new mental representations which not necessarily had to exist in the physical world at all. We got the ability to combine and play with images in a symbolic way, perhaps with the development of language, or at least in synergistic relationship with language. This ability of combination and recombination gave rise to all kinds of imaginations. These were described by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, which we talked about in episode 2. And the first kind of imagination Coleridge talked about, he called fancy, which is just a kind of imagination which is just making stuff up, combining random elements. Beyond that, there is the kind of imagination which pieces together the world in a greater scope than what is immediately available to our senses. This kind of imagination finds greater truths, and it finds connections. It is how we understand how things interact and hang together. It's how we gain the ability to abstract, to do abstract thinking. how we can so easily tell that two trees are of the same species, even though they look very different. One might have been cut down, not have any branches or leaves, but we can still see how it is connected to all other birch trees or what have you. The ability to imagine that which is not immediately present is a major driving force for the common good of humanity, as well as for the worse. It is from this that we have our collective imaginary, or what we have been calling here the mythopoetic carnival, and from this has arisen all human culture, a shared culture, and a myriad of ways that humans can bring their thoughts and emotions and ideas into the world is perhaps unique to our species. We can experience emotions and feel something so strongly that we can get an urge to bring something, express that into the world, to reflect these strong emotions. We use our imagination to do this. We paint our ideas on cave walls. We dance our ideas. Those of us who've been to a Steiner school can dance our names. We tell stories, and we pass on knowledge and insights we have gained to others. We write ideas and emotions down and print them in books, and we stand up facing the others, and we show them our skills, our ideas, or the ideas of others. But we do this in a shared community kind of situation. At least we have done since the dawn of time. Perhaps that is changing now. Oh, I'm going to be bolder with those claims as we go on, because it's important to know where we are. For all the power and potential an imaginative approach to the world has, we must remember that when we're at the carnival, we are engaging with the world in an as-if mode. We must not just make shit up and believe it to be real. And last week when I was researching for that episode, we talked about Anton LaVey, the Carny who founded the Church of Satan. And he expresses in that same book that the intellectual decompression chamber idea came from. And he expresses in that same book a whole list of tenets in his satanic Bible. And one of them ties in well with why I feel it's necessary to point out the limitation, all the limitations of the imaginative explorations. He says there in one of his tenets, "He that is slow to believe anything and everything is of great understanding, for belief in one false principle is the beginning of all unwisdom." There you have it. The belief in one false principle is the beginning of all unwisdom. So, that's what we're going to talk about here, getting Carny-wise. As I have talked about before, I'm always wandering in two worlds. Wandering and wondering. There's one part of me that's drawn towards imagination, creativity, and unbridled freedom, but there is also a deep passion that pulls me towards wanting to know the truth. And if truth is a bit too big of a concept, then at least I want to know that the world is corresponding to my ideas of it. I desire to anchor myself firmly in the real world. And this process of interaction between making things up and making sure you still have your feet firmly planted in the world is very important, particularly in these strange times of fake news and alternative facts and social media reality tunnels. And the two worlds I'm thinking of are also, in a way, imaginative, but they correspond to certain tendencies we can all relate to in the real world. I swing between the two worlds, my way being the way between, the middle way, the midway, our way, the way of the showman. On one extreme of the pendulum swing is random juxtapositions of words, surreal combinations of images, William Burroughs' cut-up texts, and hippies blowing their didgeridoos into the ocean to gain harmony with dolphins, as well as Pentecostal preachers speaking in tongues and handling snakes, and 1,000 other incarnations of the unbridled force of non-rational expressions of life. and the other side of the pendulum swings around the sooty chimneys of the Industrial Revolution, of eugenics, of cold hard science, of houses as machines to live in, of power, resource extractions, locomotives, logic and rationality without any form for anything that can't be measured or weighed. It's the hardened, solidified or ossified material world. And sitting on that pendulum, swinging like Miley Cyrus riding on her wrecking ball, is yours truly, the showman, if only as a representative of mankind. So that said, speaking of representatives of mankind, one hugely important thing to remember is to always be humble. Not in the sense of being submissive and weak, but respectful, being mindful that our ignorance, my ignorance, can fill libraries. As a superorganism, humanity knows a whole lot more than us as individuals, but there will always be mysteries on the edge of what we know. I love mysteries. I love the edges of knowledge. I love the boundaries and borderlands, and in these areas strange things happen, discoveries are made, and new patterns emerge. One of the mind's primary functions is pattern recognition. We are extremely good at noticing patterns, so much so that we often see patterns where there are none. We link together things that are not in fact related. And we live in a time when it is hard to find reliable signal in all the noise. Social media, and to an increasing amount all media, which of course is getting a lot of their information from social media these days, is flying in the direction of clickbait, of grabbing your attention but not having anything to give you once you've clicked through that's actually good for you. It's reminding me of the Illuminated Showman's Manifesto. A showman cries for attention, it says, but has something to show when he gets it. This is what the manifesto reminds us. And the things we show should enrich the audience. Our material should leave the audience richer for having given us their time in shared attention. The attention economy is what social media is dealing in. This is described eloquently by Tristan Harris and a bunch of other tech people in the currently trending Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma. I recommend checking that out. Social media is driving us into, as I mentioned, strange reality tunnels, and it's largely to blame for the almost complete breakdown of any consensus reality. Isolated in our social media echo chambers, our news feeds are unlike the news feeds of any other person. And this is far from the healthy individualism it's trumped up to be. Pun intended. When I first heard Tristan Harris speak of the attention economy, and it's a long time ago, in episode 71, I found out, on Sam Harris's podcast, Making Sense, the concept stood out for me as immediately relevant to us along the way of the showman. Attention, the meeting of people in shared attention, is a foundational element of showmanship. For now, I would just recommend checking out Tristan Harris in that episode of Making Sense, but also in the most recent episode 218, called Welcome to the Cult Factory, and also in the Social Dilemma movie. Once you've taken in some of these perspectives, you'll see what happens if one is only interested in the cares about grabbing people's attention with no thoughts as to what comes next. Little to no interest in the content presented and the effect that it has on your audience. The attention economy is only caring about that you are scrolling. It does not care what you're looking at as long as you are paying attention to their platform. Let's just quickly look at this idea from that we talked about, that I mentioned here now, with our material should leaving our audience richer, because I think this is an important point, and I have been thinking about it for a long time as the showman's obligation, because this is where I think that we show folk has an obligation to thoroughly examine our material, what we are showing people. We have an obligation to our crowds, and this is an important point along the way of the showman. This showman's obligation. Our material must leave our audiences with something which enriches them. It must be adding to the greater good. In one way or the other, our audiences should be left better off after encountering us. It's our obligation to be agents for good in the world. We can endlessly discuss what leaving someone better off might mean, but I think in your heart, with a proper imaginative approach, you will know whether your act or show at least aims for this. Anyway, that digression was to show why I think it's so important to make sure we're not drifting off into the weeds of untethered make-believe, and to put into focus what happens at the extreme end of the pendulum swing if we don't consider these things. So going back to the idea of humility, we must always be aware that whatever we think could be wrong. All models we make ourselves about the world are wrong. Any model of the world is a simplification. The map is not the territory, and the world is always more complicated. So all models are wrong, but some of them are useful, and some of them are very useful. And for us here, I believe that our concept of the mental midway, thinking of the world through the lens of showmanship, is a useful model for understanding some of these aspects. Because the carnival is a place of strange truths. The carnival and the circus and the sideshow are places where truth is something which happens in communication, not necessarily based in cold hard facts. Accountants' truths, as Werner Herzog calls it. In showmanship we tell beautiful lies, so emotionally resonant that they just beg to be believed. Lies so beautiful they have to be true. The way we present our acts and our attractions are steeped in the tools of capturing attention and then holding interest. We are all merchants in the attention economy. Followers of the way of the showman, they know that human beings are social animals who have listened to and believed stories for hundreds of thousands of years. The truth of stories is something that happens when somebody tells us a story. Who tells it, how they tell it, is often more important than the grains of truth it might or might not contain. A well-told, confidently expressed, unambiguous story just rings more true, more so than a list of indisputable facts. We respond and experience something as truth because of our emotional resonance with it. To a large part, this happens unconsciously. We can't help but find the story of a little girl who's starving compelling. Its specificity, one little girl in a difficult situation that could benefit from your help, is more likely to make us donate money than if the same ad for donations for humanitarian aid tells us that there are 50,000 children and adults, a whole city somewhere far away, and they're all starving. The fact that this single person attracts us more and makes us more likely to donate than the whole town or a whole country is a very uncomfortable truth, because we do not respond very strongly to statistics and general facts or to crowds. When someone says 35% of children in some developing nation is falling short of their daily caloric intake, it makes you feel one way. And if they say, Sasha, this sweet girl in this photograph, is 9 years old, and she cries herself to sleep every night from the pain of not having enough to eat. And for just $3, right here, you can change her life. This makes you feel very differently. I want to know who this poor Sasha is myself now, so if helping her is that easy, where do I sign up for this? Showfolk are storytellers. We tell stories and we tell them well, and some of us, like magicians for instance, they might even back up their stories with visible proof of their stories' exceptional veracity in the form of miracles. A magician might claim that if you buy their snake oil, you'll be able to see into the future. And to prove it, The magician, she might write something down on a piece of slate and then ask you to think of an animal. And you do, and you tell her, you think of a bird. And when she flips the slate around, you find that the magician had drawn a bird on the slate before you thought of it. Needless to say, you buy 2 bottles of the snake oil and get a set of steak knives thrown in. This is the kind of stuff humans want to believe. And we Carnies have been utilizing these techniques for aeons. This is why studies now find that fake news spreads faster and more easily than real news. Sensationalistic stories like the time when Associated Press tweeted that there had been an explosion in the White House that had injured Obama. It was retweeted 4,000 times and made the stock market crash. It instantly rebounded when it turned out that the tweet was fake, but by that stage there had been $130 billion loss in the stock market. And one study found that it takes verified true stories 6 times as long to reach 1,500 people. And since we showfolk use some of these techniques in our presentations and communications, it's worth taking a deeper and more complex look at what truth is and how to make sure our ideas and thoughts are aligning with the real world. Since we do use some of these same tactics, perhaps we can learn to recognize them when they are used against us. And one step along this way of recognition is to remember the carnival's edge. We must remember that there is a perimeter fence around the carnival. And by this I mean there are limits to our own world, or bubble, or mind's horizon. The perimeter fence reminds us that there is an inside and an outside, an inner and an outer geography. Beyond the carnival's edge is the rest of the world, in the same way that beyond our skin lies the rest of the world. There are certain things that happens inside the perimeter fences, certain imaginative and transgressive kinds of thinking, storytelling, and behaviors that are inappropriate and incomplete outside of the perimeter fence in the real world. We must learn to discern what is the hyperbole and aggrandizations of showmen in front of their attractions and what the truth is. When someone says the strong woman inside their canvas tent is the strongest woman in the world, this might or might not be the case. Verifying that claim might actually be quite a complex task, there being so many different kinds of strengths. Some might be powerful weightlifters, others fierce and dangerous fighters. Claims, things, and the world in general are complicated. That's the way it goes, isn't it? It's complicated. It's as simple as that, isn't it? Whenever anyone gives an explanation of something, of anything, you can almost always say, I think it's more complicated than that. This lesson was beautifully put to me by a little note inside a fortune cookie many years ago that said, to every complex problem there is an easy answer, and it's usually wrong. Remember the humility. Remember there is more to know about a story before you take it on as true. Before you decide to make any changes in the real world, make a stop, take a break, before letting any story pass the threshold to your mental midway. It's not easy, but it's important. Getting back to the social media circus. Because this is the tricky thing now. You have to remember that there's a perimeter fence around a carnival, but when have we actually stepped into a carnival? So a lot of the time these days we do it without knowing that we have. And it's because we enter, we take our phone out of our pocket and we click an app, and before we know it we are on social media, which is a circus. It's a carnival, and we might not have thought that we have, but we are stepping over the threshold into if you could do it into any carnival, then stepping into it is you're going into an intellectual decompression chamber. Every time you open a social media app, and practically any other kind of media for that matter, you're stepping into an altered reality. What grabs your attention might not even be a person. It could be some kind of bot specifically designed to spread disinformation. Beyond this threshold lies a different place where different rules apply. But the social media carnival is a very lonely affair, which is so far away from what it should be. Like the carnival experience that we know it. It's people getting together and sharing, participating in things. But without even contemplating it or knowing it, we have stepped into a carnival by the click of a touch on our phone. And along this carnival, every showman along the way is selling you, and only you, a version of life, a version of reality that is only for you. You like it. You might like it more than real life and spend more time at the social media carnival than in the real world. Maybe it's because everything along this digital midway is just that extra bit of technicolor, and the stories that little bit more sensational, and the other carnival patrons that much more airbrushed and good looking and interesting. But in this carnival, where you have the illusion of being well connected, you are more alone than you'll ever know. Tristan Harris said in this latest episode at Making Sense, he said, social media has us living in a shattered prism of a shared reality where we are each trapped in a separate shard. Because when everybody visits a different carnival, each person having a completely different experience with different facts and fictions to your own, you're more alone than we have ever been as a human species. The carnival of social media is unlike all real world carnivals, and also the mythopoetic carnival, in that it is explicitly created to pander to each individual's weakness and proclivities. It's like each one of us have become an island, or like each one of us have become a completely isolated country town in the middle of a wasteland, and the carnival that comes to our town is only visited by us. We can't share our experience with anyone. It's like a prison of loneliness filled with delusions aimed to be effective in modifying your behavior. This change is aimed mainly at just keeping you at the carnival. They'll throw attractions at you with an unimaginable accuracy and making it addictive and very hard to leave, and that's all they care about. Keeping you at the carnival, and this is not what a carnival is about. This is not what it should be. This is some dark carnival digital carnival. This is not the participatory experience at the core of circus and showmanship. A big difference is that we step into this wasteland carnival of social media without recognizing it for what it is. We step into a carnival reality with a carnival's approach to truth, where your attention is the main currency and no thought has been put into making sure that the attractions are wholesome. Hopefully, at least by recognizing the social media for what it is, you're on the right way to improve your situation. Because you need to develop tools and practices to protect yourself and to become Carny wise to the real world and to the digital carnivals. We look more into potential tools for this next week, because we do need good tools. We are quite helpless in our naive, unschooled approach to this digital midway. They have destabilized our world. I believe they're a major, if not the major, cause of our complete breakdown of consensus reality. Over the last episodes, since episode 9, we've seen that the collective imaginary exists. There is a mythopoetic carnival space of shared dreams. And we've also seen that this space can be altered. We've just become aware of all of this, and now we find this space, for the first time in history, has been hijacked by machines and algorithms. This is that robot invasion that we were promised in The Matrix and The Terminator. But they aren't stomping around in the streets with guns. The AIs are just giving us whatever it knows will capture our attention, absolutely regardless of whether it's good for us. On top of that fact, the organizations and nation states are deliberately destabilizing elections and the current chaotic world situation, to the point that most of our biggest immediate problems like climate change and dealing with the pandemic can't be dealt with because the very issues has become politicized. We did not evolve for each of us to live in a separate reality, to have our closest neighbors seeing a completely different news, in quotation mark, news feed than ourselves is not something our deep time history have prepared us for. People who lived together or close together would see the same things and thus have a shared experience. Now each person around the table at home, or when we have selected to meet up with some friends to have a lunch together, there are invariably moments when each person is on their phone just quickly visiting their very own digital midway. The social cohesion is gone. The collective imaginary has become just imaginary, just controlled by social media bots and AI algorithms, and the only other stuff you see, what advertisers is what advertisers want you to see. Weirdly, because these ads are so perfectly targeted, the ads seems appropriate, like little islands of hope. Facebook knows I love Baby Yoda. I love The Mandalorian, and so at regular intervals I get to see this little green beam of hope smiling at me, and it makes me feel good for a moment, and then I scroll on through the lonely wastelands of my feed. And we've spent a bunch of time on this show talking about the existence of a collective imaginary, the benefits of it is for our social cohesion, and we have also looked at how this can potentially be altered in regards to the stories we tell and the things we show our audiences. We should keep our obligation, our responsibility for the good of the crowds firmly in mind. I don't think this is going on at the digital midway. But at some point, we leave the carnival, we close our apps. Outside the perimeter fences, we again find ourselves in the real world, and out there, what we believe, the information we have internalized can and does have real-world consequences. As showmen, as showfolk, we must be wise to these techniques of persuasion. Because in the real world, we must use and master tools for knowing and understanding in a different way than at the carnival. To protect ourselves, any good Carnyan follower of the way must develop a bullshit detection kit. A set of tools that can help us separate the signal from the noise, both in the real world and at our digital carnivals, going ding-ding and vibrating with invitations to step right up and open that app in our pockets. Well, I mean, the phone is in our pocket, is what I mean. The carnival is where I think the carnival's got a role to play, because as a training ground. Because I would argue that these tools of bullshit detection can be developed quite exquisitely at the carnivals. At our carnivals' real world, our mythopoetic as well, if we are to explore these issues in our mind. Inside the carnival there are tons of opportunity to test and develop our bullshit detection skills, and learning to use the most important tool in existence, our mind. Getting Carny wise, developing tools and techniques to protect ourselves against the reality distortions of social media, conspiracy thinking, popular delusions, and madness of crowds. This is supremely important. As sweet as the carnival barker's claims might be, you should always be wary of accepting them as true. Who is the person telling the tale? Have they got financial gain in making you believe their story is true? Are they making claims that goes against things you thought you knew? Are they making claims too good to be true? Price every time, everyone's a winner? In Carny slang, a mark is a townsperson who'll make a good victim. As the story goes, the ticket man taking the tickets at the carnival entrance would get to, from the box that he would stand and he would get to look down into people's wallets as they paid, and if the person was loaded or if the ticket seller realized that through interacting with the patron buying the ticket that he had more money than sense, the ticket seller would slap the patron on the back as he entered the carnival, and the ticket seller had chalk on his hand so that his backslap left a literal mark on the mark's back, signaling to the operators along the way that this person, being marked with chalk, would, for one reason or another, make a good victim. One of the hallmarks of a good mark, as I see it, is bad or faulty thinking. Certain things should, by the very form they are presented in, raise red flags. A mark might be smart as all that, but that does not necessarily protect them. Someone might know lots of stuff, but knowing stuff is not wisdom. It does not make you Carny wise. Knowing stuff is just having knowledge, like how knowing that a tomato is a fruit, that is knowledge. But knowing that not putting that tomato in a fruit salad, that's wisdom. Wisdom is then applied knowledge. Examples of bad or faulty thinking are things like believing that when someone say they've found a great solution that experts somehow have missed, like a woman in a canvas booth selling herbal remedies made from nothing but lemon and herbs, which cures all those things that regular science-based medicine can't help with. These are exactly the kinds of things that smells just enough of truthiness to be used in an emotional spiel by Carny. Collectively, as followers of the way, as artists or fellow travelers on our way through life, we know these things. We know there are lies out there, but for whatever reason we all fall prey to them. They're so beautiful and they're so powerful, and they work even when you know they're not true. Like that poor little girl, Sasha, who cries herself to sleep. I wonder how I can give her my $3. How can we protect ourselves against these kinds of weapons of mass seduction? Wisdom is to be able to see through illusion, to see the methods behind the effects. This is our upcoming project of exploration. In these next episodes, we're going to try to crank out some tools to get Carny wise. We can never be completely immune to bullshit, but there are strategies that we can place between ourselves and the honey-sweet seductions of Judas showman and the social media, digital carnivals, and the mindless shares that comes up in our feed of unchecked disinformation. We're going to look closer at these tools in next week's episode of The Way of the Showman. All right, so a lot of ideas and a whole new theme to talk about for the next little bit. So I would recommend you set off one day a week to not use social media. On that day you don't even have to get on just one time just to quickly share the latest episode of The Way of the Showman. Just you. Be you. Be with some people out there in the real world, maybe in a forest. I've been spending a lot of time walking in forests, and it's a beautiful, beautiful experience. And if there is no forest, perhaps there are deserts around where you are, or perhaps you can walk along the sea. Take some time to yourself. Log off and tune in to the greater truths all around us. I think that forests, they tell the truth in a very eloquent way. And with that, that's all we need to say. And all that's left to say is take care of yourself and those you love. And I hope to see you all along the way.